Hello and welcome back to The Kickoff, the My Betting Mates football podcast dedicated to all things A-League and English Premier League. I'm once again joined this week by Nick Dabano. Welcome back, Nick.
No, thanks for having me again, Matt.
Another big weekend of A-League as we finish the home and away season. We might crown a Premier this week, and then obviously all the title race fallout from the Premier League. We'll start close to home as we always do with the A-League, and obviously the finals picture is all sorted, but we do have one more regular season game to play through, which will ultimately decide our Premier for the season before we get into the start of the final series. So it all, I guess, kicks off with the Premiership decider between the Central Coast Mariners and Adelaide United. Central Coast playing for the Premiership, Adelaide really playing just to spoil the party and try and finish their season off on a high, I guess. It is played at Central Coast. What are you excited about looking ahead to this one?
Yeah, this is a big one. I mean, it's as simple as that for the Mariners, a draw or a win, and the Premiership is theirs. Draw's enough because of the new tiebreaker, which is games won instead of goal difference. A win, of course, will take them above Wellington. Anything less, and Wellington are premiers on Wednesday. So we're going to have the simultaneous kickoffs, but of course, this game being rescheduled because the Mariners flying back from their AFC Cup semi got delayed. They were stuck here overseas, so they moved the game to this Wednesday where they'll play Adelaide, who have nothing to play for by pride. They've locked themselves in the Australia Cup as well, so they're basically just playing for, ending this season on a little bit of a high. I mean, the Mariners, they've been in great form as of late. They had to do it tough against the Jets last week, which we've spoken about. The Jets have been so gutsy to end the season. They gave the Mariners a real red-hot crack last Saturday, but they flexed in a key point and were able to come away with 3 points and ultimately put them in the position to give themselves every chance to still win the Premiership. Look, you'd expect for them to get the job done. The fixtures have been piling up with their AFC Cup duties, and of course, they could win 2 bits of silverware in a week, which is quite exciting for the Mariners. They could win the Premiership on Wednesday, then they'll fly to Oman, where they'll play in the AFC Cup final on Monday morning in Oman. They win that, then they'll become the second ever Australian team to win an Asian competition, of course, after the Wanderers won the Asian Champions League 10 years ago. So it's very exciting. I mean, the Mariners have a chance to, actually essentially win the last 2 bits of A-League silverware, of course, being the reigning champions as well, and put themselves in a position to win a treble as well, which is quite incredible. Considering that this is a team with a small budget, they're not one of the heavyweights per se in the A-League when it comes to the backing standpoint, but they have found a way to bat above their average with really smart recruiting. They've been able to regenerate the squad even after losing a host of key players who went overseas, Nick Montgomery as well, their head coach, and they've done brilliantly this season. So I think they'll get the job done on Wednesday. I mean, Adelaide, it's the last game we'll see of Nestor Irankunda in an Adelaide jersey, at least in this stint. Who knows, maybe he'll come back when he's a lot older, hopefully the tail end of his career when he's achieved some amazing things abroad. But look, they're simply just playing for pride. They've ended the season with a few good results, but I think the Mariners are going to have all that momentum and they'll do enough to at least just secure the Premiership.
Yeah, the momentum with the Mariners is extraordinary. It's an amazing time to be a Mariners fan, not just with the men's team, the women's team also had quite a strong season. Some great moments and memories there for Central Coast. And obviously their AFC Cup run has been quite lucrative for the club as well. Great prize money for the club and even more on offer if they actually do go on and win it. So, a truly historic season in the offing for the Mariners. And I really see no reason to tip against them, against Adelaide. I think it's just been in their brand, their style this year to really win these important games by hook or by crook. There's been some really emphatic wins along the way as well, but I just get the feeling maybe Adelaide, like you say, not much to play for, maybe a bit flat at the end of the season. Mariners probably hard to tip against in that one. And then that will set up the week 1 of the finals where we've got obviously Sydney taking on Macarthur FC and a Melbourne derby, which has a new kickoff time. But we'll start off in Sydney. The first time these two have faced off in finals, obviously Macarthur back in the finals after not making it last year. How do you see this game going?
this is an interesting one. Macarthur have won the last 3 matches against Sydney, so they've had the wood over the Sky Blues over the last period of time. They beat them in the last meeting only a couple of weeks ago in Campbelltown, but 2 of those wins have come at Allianz Stadium, which is really important to note as well. This is an interesting game. I mean, Macarthur were battered by Wellington in the last game of the season on the road. They weren't really at the races at all that day. Wellington was just simply too good for them, and Sydney's coming off a 7-1 win against Perth Glory, who had really thrown the towel in the last few weeks of the season. So Sydney's got the momentum in terms of, the big win in the final day, but you have to then look back to what they were able to do a fortnight ago, which makes this game so hard to predict. I mean, there is every chance this game goes right to the distance, and I think that there's every chance this could go to extra time, maybe even penalties. You'd hope that there's a good turnout for this game as well at Allianz Stadium. Hopefully some Macarthur fans that make the trip up from Campbelltown too. Sydney have got the players in form with the likes of Lolly, Robert Mack finding some scoring form, Anthony Caceres. They've blooded in a lot of good young players this year, which has been a change in the philosophy at Sydney this year with, young Hayden Matthews, Jake Gerwood-Reich, Corey Holman, these sort of players getting opportunities, and even Jaden Kaczarski. They're players I think Sydney are going to have to lean on a lot in this final series if they're going to be able to come away with the win. But Macarthur's got so much talent. I mean, Valère Germain, Ulysses Stavila back in the team. Like, they've got a lot of players that can win you a game on a dime. It's been such an impressive season for Macarthur to get to this point, but they'd love to take it that one step further. I mean, to be able to get to a semi-final where they have a chance to host a final as well. They've never hosted a final at Campbelltown as well, so that's why I think it was a bit of a gut punch for them to lose hosting rights to this as a result of losing that game against Wellington and opening the door for Sydney. Because if they'd won, they would have finished third as well. So that doesn't work in their favour too. But Sydney, I mean, they've still got the tried and tested players who have been there in finals. Last year, they came in with momentum. They finished 6th. They were able then to come out, 5th in the end. They came out and they beat the Wanderers in that first final. And, they pushed City in that first leg that ultimately got blown out. But I think Sydney's finals experience with the likes of Lolly, the likes of Matt Caceres and co, and I think at home with their home fans behind them at Allianz Stadium and just the form they've been in under Ufuk Talay, I see them turning that sort of trajectory around that we have seen as of late from Macarthur having the wood over Sydney. Yeah. And I think the Sky Blues do book a place in the semi-finals as a result. Yeah,
there's, like you say, the general form is with Sydney FC, but in the head-to-head, it's Macarthur do make a very compelling case, and they do have those X-factor players that really can win a game for you out of nothing. I tend to agree with you, though. I think the coup of, the last week sort of being able to win the home final and make it a really big occasion in front of your home fans. I think that can make a bit of a difference in finals, particularly when you've got 2 teams from effectively the same city. So I do think that tips it in Sydney's favour. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get it done in 90 minutes. I wonder if Macarthur go into this trying to try and force it to penalties or something like that. But I'd probably agree with you and back a Sydney FC win there. The other game, obviously, a huge Melbourne derby. Originally scheduled for 3 p.m. on Sunday, but the football powers have seen some sense and moved it to a 5 o'clock kickoff. Sunday, obviously being Orthodox Easter, which is a obviously important day for a lot of Victory's fan base, and probably would have struggled to get there for a 3 p.m. kickoff on top of any other sort of commitments. But yeah, really compelling derby. They all are in some way, and not every derby this year has really delivered. In fact, I'd say probably none of them have exceptionally delivered. But finals always adds that little bit of extra drama, that extra spice. And yeah, it's good to see these two facing off in finals, first time since 2015.
Yeah, 9 years ago they played in a semi-final under the roof at Marvel Stadium. 50,000 people packed in for that day. That Victory won 3-0, and then of course they went on to win the championship that year. It was a great run for Victory. It was one of City's first real pushes in the finals that they fell short on that day, and things have changed a lot since then because since the last time Victory won a championship, it's really been Melbourne City that have dominated the league. I mean, this is their 10th straight finals appearance. Yeah. They won the last 3 premierships before this year as well. Grand final appearances in the last 4. Of course, only won 1 of those, but they'd always come away with some sort of silverware. So it's always been in City's favour. But things have changed this year. I mean, City had to get it done literally the final day of the season. They were very lucky because, I mean, that game against Western United, I mean, young Abel Wallity from Western United was just a few inches offside, and had he scored, Western Sydney Wanderers would be there right now.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we're here. It's a Melbourne derby. It's going to be a great occasion. As you said, we've had 2 0-0 draws this season between the two sides. Then Victory won the last meeting 2-1, coming from behind to win that game. Damien De Silva with the winner on that night. But City come in with the form. They've won their last 3 games. Some really good wins in that as well. Smashing Perth Glory, beating Western Sydney Wanderers, beating Western United, just getting the job done when it matters. They've gotten key players back as well, like Matthew Leckie. Jamie McLaren scored in the last few games as well, which is good for his confidence. Marin Jakalic, Tolgai Arslan, these players all really important to them. Of course, no Marco Tilio, still through injury, another setback for him, but Victory, conversely, they haven't won in their last 3. 2 defeats, 1 draw. A really disappointing loss against Western Sydney Wanderers on Saturday. They burst out of the gates. They looked like they were going to win that game quite convincingly, and then they just fell to bits. Defensively, they were really open, and that was a good opportunity for them to farewell Lee Broxham as well, who, of course, announced his retirement. I'm not sure if he'll play in the finals at all. Hopefully, be able to see him again. But an occasion which Victory would have loved to have ended with a win. They do go into finals now with a little bit less momentum. So it does tip the favour somewhat in City's favour, who have been very, very good at Amy Park this season. They've got the 2nd best home record in the league. Of course, this is technically a Victory home game, but it's still Amy Park. It doesn't really change much, bar it's going to be very, very loud in Victory's favour. Yeah. It's a tough game to pick because City do have the form. City have the momentum, but Victory, I mean, they haven't been it's weird because they haven't been necessarily dominant this season by any stretch, and they've actually kind of underwhelmed in a lot of games this season. But they have shown that they've got the individual players to really flip a game on its head and be able to win these sort of games. I think this is going to turn to quite a dour affair. I think if there's going to be one of these 2 finals that probably goes right deep into the 120 minutes, it's probably this one. I think it'd be more of a chess match, if anything, like the first 2 games were. I think, if either side can strike early, it'd be massive for them. And it's probably going to come down to, the battle between, is it going to be Bruno Fornaroli, Daniel Arzani and Zinedine Makash, who is the match winners for Victory versus, Leckie, McLaren, Tolgai Arslan for Melbourne City. But if I had to pick and go one way, I'm going to say Melbourne Victory get the job done in a very tightly contested elimination final and set up their place in the semis.
We've been saying for the last few weeks that, of all the teams jostling for those positions in the bottom 4 of the top 6, the one you really probably wouldn't want to play in a final situation is
Melbourne City.
Melbourne City. My gut feel is that Melbourne City will come out on top. I think their big players have sort of started to get back into the lineup, started to score some goals, started to find some form. The win, obviously, against Western United wasn't the most convincing of those last 3 wins. And conversely, Victory just, they still finished in a good position on the table. But even at the start of the season, when they were having that super long undefeated stretch, they were really, on their worst days, the most unconvincing out of that top 3. And it just feels like, when things aren't going their way, like it can really turn badly for Popovic. And I sometimes worry that he's much more concerned about managing the opposition than getting the best out of his own players. Because as you've mentioned, they do have 3 genuine match winners on their team. But it's almost like he restricts what they could do for him in an offensive output for the sake of not conceding or just trying to stay in a game, you know what I mean? So I think that's probably the interesting battle here. But, I mean, by the same token, City clearly haven't got the best out of a very, very good team all season. So definitely a good case to make either way. I can't shake the feeling, for whatever reason, that Melbourne City are going to come out on top. I'm not convinced if it happens in 90 minutes or extra time, penalties, whatever, but it's just the sort of the way that Victory season has gone in some of the key moments this year. I feel like they've just fallen a bit short, and City do have that sort of momentum carrying them into the finals. So that's sort of my tip, but I'm not really sure at what point they're going to get it done.
Yeah, I think just the key message is that either way, like if you can, with the change in kickoff time, get to Amy Park because, it's a 5 o'clock kickoff. If you can get out of, your Sunday lunch, if you've got Orthodox Easter and you can get down, do get there. Even if you're based in Sydney as well and you'll get a chance to go to Sydney MacArthur. These are two cracking games.
Yeah.
Two games are genuine sort of, local rivalries. It's finals time. Now's when things start to get really exciting. And I think as well, this game between Victory and City, I mean, there's something about this that, you just can't feel confident picking either way. Like it feels, as much as City have been so underwhelming this year, there's also that part of me that goes, I would still not be surprised if City ran the gauntlet and won the whole thing because they've just got so many quality players that in any moment they could turn things around and get it done. But it's so tough. I think this Melbourne derby, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if whoever wins this game ends up playing in the grand final.
Yeah.
And actually that causes an upset in the semis. I think you win this, you get all that, imagine all the momentum coming out of winning a Melbourne derby elimination final, going into a two-legged affair, whether it's against the Mariners, if it is Victory, well, it depends obviously whoever finishes where, but you play the Mariners potentially who have been travelling a lot. They potentially might start to catch up with them a little bit. You might get them on a good day. Wellington, I mean, people have been talking a lot about the dip's got to come, the dip's got to come, the dip's got to come. You make the most of that home fixture, suddenly things turn on its head. So I don't know. I just get a sense either way, whoever wins this Melbourne derby elimination final or go out on a limb here will play in the grand final this year.
Okay, that's not a bad prediction to follow. So we'll see how that one goes. So obviously a shorter A-League wrap up this week with just the 3 games to look at. So we'll head over to the Premier League where we had another fascinating weekend. Great wins for Arsenal and Manchester City. Arsenal beating Tottenham 3-2. Arsenal started that game so well. 3-0 up at half-time. And again, I still think that when they're on fire, they're the best team to watch out of that sort of top 3 that sort of battled it out all season. And it looked like they were sort of on the road to a very easy win at Tottenham. But obviously, Arsenal gave Tottenham a sniff, a very bad error at the back to let Tottenham back into the game and set up a bit of a nervy finish, but Arsenal ultimately coming out on top. And Manchester City doing what they do, picking up the 2-0 win. Although I think, Chris Wood had a great chance at 1-0 to level the scores for Nottingham. And that would have been very interesting, that game, had that gone in. But, City just ruthlessly punishing the error and making it 2-0.
It's funny because I woke up this morning, time of recording on Monday, with one of my friends who's an Arsenal supporter messaging saying, bemoaning Chris Wood. And I'm thinking, what's going on? You see that miss and you're like, it's those moments in the title race where you just go back and you look at it and you go, just what if?
Yeah.
Arsenal, they survive a scare. They got the job done against the Spurs team who look like they're starting to unfortunately fall to bits a little bit at the moment, and they're probably starting to lose a bit of pace in that top 4 race, even after Villa dropping points against Chelsea. But Arsenal just needed to win that game. They did. It was a tough away day for them. They've still got some tough games to go. And now they'll be praying and hoping that maybe City can drop some points because it was looking like maybe it could happen this week. But, it was just the inevitability of them in the end. They came out with a 2-0 win. Professional got the 3 points on the board. And that's exactly what you expect from Man City. So it all continues again this weekend. You look at which we'll talk about soon, Arsenal playing Bournemouth, Man City against Wolves. Big games for those two teams. But again, it's the pressure, being able to just get those points on the board. It's all right, you win, now you got to respond. So I'm pretty sure, Arsenal play first and then City play afterwards as well. So again, the pressure will be back on City to respond every time. But if Arsenal continue to put the marker down, it just mounts that extra pressure on them.
You definitely prefer to be at the Arsenal, kicking off first, setting the agenda and hopefully keeping that pressure on, because I think that's very telling. Obviously, last game, everyone's playing at the same time, but you really, where you can put that scoreboard pressure on, I guess that's what you want to be doing. So Arsenal's still really in with a shout. City still have some tough games. Arsenal obviously have to do their bit, but still a thrilling end to the season on the cards. One team that's sort of exited the title race, though, is Liverpool. We spoke last week about a pretty defining week. I had the trust in them that they'd get it done in the Merseyside derby. You correctly predicted that Everton would ruin their title chances.
God, did they ever ruin them? That was vindication for the Toffees.
Yeah, big time. And, it didn't get any better. A 2-2 draw against West Ham at the weekend. And it's all making for a bit of a miserable end to Klopp's time. Obviously, as time progresses and you look back with hindsight and, assess Klopp's reign as Liverpool manager, it's only going to be positive. But, personally, the more I think about the whole big announcement, the way it was sort of managed around, Klopp's finishing up at the end of the season, I can't, and it's an easy reflection for me to make as a United fan, but, I think back to when Sir Alex retired at the end of the 2013 season, no one knew, which is pretty remarkable to think that news never got out until the Premier League was won and done and dusted. It's just turned into a big distraction for Liverpool.
And again, though, Sir Alex had his big U-turn back in the day as well. So,
maybe he learned his lesson from that.
Is Klopp going to do a Sir Alex? And maybe, there's rumours of already his successor is already in the pipeline. But I don't know. Yes, we can look at that. I feel like potentially, but you look at the injuries. Yeah. We've spoken about the playing style, the fixtures, everything. I think they just look gassed. They just look so tired now. And I think it's all just caught up with them in the end. And this has been a tough few weeks for them. The results have just fallen off a cliff, and I think that they just want to. It almost just seems like they're just waiting for this season to be over. That was a really disappointing performance against West Ham. They were leading in that game, and you would have thought they'd close out and come away with the win against the Hammers, who have also quite a hefty fixtures toll as well, with playing in their own European commitments. But look, you know what? Like it's the end of an era now at Liverpool. As you said, they'll look back at this period he's been coach, and he's rejuvenated the club. Like I think if you look back to where they were when he took over, they were absolutely nowhere near it. No. They were far and away not nearly the team that they are right now. He won them the Premier League title. He won them the Champions League. He took them to multiple Champions League finals. He's done wonders with them. But look, it is disappointing there won't be another piece of silverware to go with it. He did win the Carabao Cup, but not to win a Premier League or Europa League with it as well is obviously a bit of a bitter way to end. But I think when it's all said and done, when the everything's simmered down and we look back at this period of time, we can look back at it and say that he probably has been one of the best coaches we've seen, not only for Liverpool, but in the Premier League. And I'm looking forward to see where he ends up next. But I think maybe it is time for, as he said, he's tired, he's exhausted, he wants his next challenge. And I think maybe Liverpool might need, someone else to step in, and it might be time for a fresh voice, to come in who's, rejuvenated, who's energised, someone who, feels like they can continue the legacy of Jurgen Klopp. But obviously there's a lot of pressure on that. We see how many times after a great coach comes in, does an amazing job, and usually the first appointment afterwards, how many times has it backfired? You talk about Sir Alex Ferguson, poor David Moyes, came with all the pressure in the world, and he's remembered, as much as he's done some great stuff with Everton and West Ham, he's unfortunately remembered a lot for his time at Manchester United. Yeah. You think back at even with Arsenal, after Arsene Wenger, Unai Emery coming in and doing the best he could, but at the end of the day, it didn't work out the best for him. It's tough. So, yeah, we'll see if Liverpool can maybe just end this season with a bit of pride, come away with a few more wins, just make things a little bit happier for them to end the year. But it's a long season. They've played a lot of football. I think just now they're just gassed. They look tired, and it's all just caught up with them. Yeah,
they're just mentally, emotionally, physically just.
It's just been a taxing season for them. The injuries, probably the farewell as well with Jurgen Klopp as well. Thinking about your coaches going at the end of the season, playing in so many competitions, the pressure as well that comes with that. They've had so many young kids have to be forced into the spotlight probably sooner than they would have hoped. And now I think it's just gotten to that stage of the season where it's like they're just gassed, and it's just I think maybe it's just taking its toll while the others are able to just kick ahead and find those last reserves of energy.
Yeah, well, certainly will be interesting to see who follows Klopp. They've obviously got a great canvas to work with, understand the challenges of following such a great manager, but good squad, good young players ready to come through. So. No reason whoever comes in next shouldn't be able to continue to fight for the Premier League title in the seasons to come. Another manager who could be facing a bit of scrutiny is Eric Ten Hag at Manchester United. They drew 1-1 with Burnley over the weekend. And the match finished to the chorus of boos once again at Old Trafford. I mean, realistically, they, having had the lead, they really threw away the extra 2 points with a pretty comical sort of bunch of errors at the back, and then obviously Onana conceding a penalty, coming out to try and clear the ball. And yeah, it's sort of been the story of their season. Not always been good enough over the 90 minutes. Somehow get into winning positions, only to throw them away. And it's costing them, Every team ahead of them is giving them every opportunity to claw back that points difference. I mean, even at this point, it's probably a bit late. But again, another crucial opportunity to gain points on Tottenham, on Aston Villa. And they couldn't get it done. And I'm starting to think at this point, does an FA Cup triumph actually even guarantee Eric Ten Hag another year? Because if you're the new ownership structure at Manchester United, do you think you've seen enough from him over this year and even last year to suggest he's the guy you back to get this team back to the top of the pile?
Hasn't been convincing the last 2 seasons at all. I mean, he got into Champions League this year. They fell out in the group stage. I mean, they're not going to probably play. They're obviously not playing Champions League football next season, and they've taken a step back. They haven't won anything. Yes, they might win the FA Cup, but it does feel like that we're back square one again. We're back at square one again with Manchester United. It's it's been the same case since Sir Alex Ferguson left. It's a new coach that's come in. It's new ideas, promise of a fresh start. A new era, and then we're back at square one again. I mean, how many different coaches have we seen now? We've seen Moyes, we've seen Mourinho, we've seen, Louis van Gaal before that. We saw Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ralph Rangnick, Eric Ten Hag. I mean, who's next? Like, it's a matter of also, if you're going to replace him, like, who is the guy that Manchester United are going to hire that's going to be able to take them to that next step? Because some teams have already gotten busy with those appointments. Like, I know that he's been there and done that in the Premier League in the sense of, that Premier League team probably wouldn't touch him again, but you're looking at free agent coaches. I mean, Antonio Conte's basically already signed his papers with Napoli. Thiago Motta has been really good in Italy as well with Bologna. He's off to Juventus. I mean, did they look at Sporting Lisbon? Did they look to someone else, elsewhere? I mean, what free agent coaches are really available? They're not going to go back to Mourinho, know. So do they back it in for one more season? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the squad is good enough still to be playing in the top 4, but there's still some glaring weaknesses in that team that still haven't been sorted. There have been key players who have missed a lot of football this season. And, I mean, there's so many just holes all around, it feels like, at Manchester United. So, I don't know, mate. Like, you probably know better than me when it comes to United how it should go for next season, but I don't know if winning the FA Cup is enough to keep him around next season.
Well, I think the big problem or the question that he has to answer is around the recruitment. Last year it was all about trying to play a certain brand, and I feel like this year it's just moved away just to try and get results, but he hasn't achieved the results in a lot of ways. And I look at, and it's hard to know where his responsibility as manager ends and where the back office staff sort of take over. But the amount of time and money they spent on chasing a guy like Mason Mount, who didn't really answer or solve a problem that existed within the squad. They forced through a loan deal for Amrabat, and he ends up playing mostly as a left back. And it was just the worst start to his career at United, because it just put him under pressure playing in a completely, wrong position for him, particularly against some of the more pacey wingers. He just looked terrible, and he's really struggled to recover from that start, even when he has moved into a more preferred central position. He spent a lot of money on promise in Anthony. I think Højlund's probably one talent he's identified and maybe got right. He's got a really bright future at the club. But the biggest, I guess, assets that have emerged in Eric Ten Hag's side are academy prospects who were probably already at the club. Garnacho, Kobe Mainu, these sort of players. So what has he done outside of that to complement what's already at the club? I'm not sure. I think he's probably missed the mark there. And if it has been him running a lot of that player identification and trying to find the right players for him, I think that's the biggest mark against him. And it's probably the one reason why I'm not convinced in him as the manager to get United back on top. But having said that, like you say, who you go and get and replace him with, there's not a whole breadth of options out there. And like you say, other clubs who are facing managerial changes are already making moves in that department. So, yeah, it will certainly be an interesting one to follow. I think if he does win an FA Cup, it might end up saving him just because he will have beaten City to win it, and that will be a big sort of feather in his cap. But should it? I'm not totally sure, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that front. Still a few weeks before the FA Cup final. So we'll have a look at the Premier League fixtures for the weekend, and it all kicks off on Friday morning Aussie time with Chelsea taking on Spurs. And as we've mentioned, Spurs still fighting to try and make that top four. They didn't do themselves any favours with the loss against Arsenal, particularly with Aston Villa also dropping points against Chelsea. How do you see this game unfolding?
Well, Spurs have been out of form as of late, and they're under a bit of pressure to get some results and try and make up that lost ground on Villa. And I think it's going to be probably, even if they do get 3 points, a bit too hard for them to get fourth. I think it ends as a draw.
Yeah. I'll go Chelsea win at home. I don't think it's going too well for Postecoglou's men. And, I think it could be a tough ask at Stamford Bridge. Luton taking on Everton Saturday morning. How do you see that one going?
Everton win again. They're in some form at the moment. I think they edge one step closer to safety with a win.
Yeah, Everton for me there as well. Arsenal at home taking on Bournemouth. I mean, they should win. These are the sort of games that they might stumble on, but I'm tipping Arsenal.
Yeah, Gunners for me.
Yep. Brentford taking on Fulham. Again, Brentford really do need to keep winning to sort of maintain their spot in the Premier League. Can they get it done against Fulham?
I think so. But I think this ends as a draw. I think 2-2 draw in this game.
I have a draw here as well. Burnley taking on Newcastle.
Burnley are desperate. And, I mean, when teams are backed into a corner and need points, they're still alive. I think they get a point in this game. I think this ends as a draw at Turf Moor.
I know we spoke a lot about United, but I thought Burnley were more than good value for that point. Onana made a number of good saves.
Yeah.
And realistically, maybe Burnley should have been up before Anthony scored. So, at Turf Moor, I'm going to go draw, but there's part of me that thinks Burnley get up there. But I'm going to tip a draw. Sheffield United taking on Nottingham Forest. It's a massive game for Nottingham. Sheffield United again struggled over the weekend.
I'm going to say Nottingham Forest win this game.
Yeah, I got Forest winning here as well. Manchester City taking on Wolves at the Etihad. A few weeks ago, we were looking at this game as maybe one of those title deciders. Wolves obviously one of the best performances against Manchester City so far this season, but replicating that at the Etihad's a completely different proposition.
Yeah, City win this game quite easily, I think. I think it's unfortunate as it would be for Arsenal fans. I think City win.
We'll try and build it up, and Man City's going to win this. That's all right. So, hard to disagree there, though. Manchester City win that one for me. Brighton taking on Aston Villa. I have Aston Villa winning this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I think they win.
And then Chelsea taking on West Ham. I mean, not a heap at stake here, but still an interesting game nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the Hammers win this game off the short turnaround for Chelsea. It's going to be a bit tough, so I think West Ham win at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, I think I'll back Chelsea again here. I don't know why I'm backing Chelsea twice in a week, but I think Chelsea have enough about them. Liverpool taking on Tottenham. Again, a game that we thought might have some title ramifications. Not so much anymore, but Anfield's always a tough ask.
I think Liverpool bounce back and win this game. I think at home, again, short turnaround for Tottenham. I think Liverpool just going to be too strong.
Yep, Liverpool for me there as well. And then on Tuesday morning, Crystal Palace take on Manchester United at Selhurst Park. Man United seem to get a win, have a bad result, bounce back with a win. So I'm not sure if the bounce back factor works here. I'll let you go first.
Go United to win then.
To win. I'm going to go draw. I think Crystal Palace have enough about them to hold United to a draw. Well, that wraps up another week of the kickoff. A big thank you to Nick for joining me once again.
No, thank you.
And we'll see you back next week to wrap up all the A-League finals action and another round of Premier League.